Hello, all. And on behalf of WGU President Scott Pulsifer and our Board of Trustees, welcome to the celebration of WGU Teachers College, 20 years from idea to impact. A little quick background on WGU Teachers College. We were founded 20 years ago with a grant from the Department of Education for $10 million. They were looking for a nonprofit innovator who could help close teaching shortages around the country, and it really proved to be a model for next generation teaching and learning, and WGU fit the bill. Fast forward 20 years later, 35,000 students across all 50 states, largest college of education in the United States, 50,000 graduates making a difference in classrooms and school buildings. We're in the top 1% of conveyors of degrees to students of color in this country. Key programs in STEM, special education, education technology, and leadership. A big path traveled over the last 20 years. Tonight, we're going to take some time to celebrate that. We're going to begin with a montage of interviews from some of the key players that helped found our college and are helping kind of us look to the future, where they're going to go into a talk show panel with some key education thought leaders who are going to unpack the challenge it is to go from idea to impact in the world of education, how Teachers College has navigated those waters, and the kind of what the road ahead for the world of education looks like. Then we're going to come back out, showcase one of our alumni, of whom we are very, very proud, and then invite you to a networking event. So without further ado, let's get into the VIP video.
In September 2001, the Department of Education awarded $10 million to the Western Governors University to create a teacher education program, a teachers college.
This is one of those where when you actually can look back and see how a $10 million grant seeded something that is really so incredibly impactful in our country.
WGU Teachers College has revolutionized the way we think about training teachers, and it has not only done so at volume, right, with 50,000 alums, but it's also done so about the quality of that experience and to look at actual mastery of the core concepts and practices that you need to be an effective teacher. And
the thing I remember most vividly, and it has stayed with me all this time, is that the ideas about shaping a new kind of university, rethinking higher education, did not come from within higher ed.
Was this novel idea of a teachers college that would prepare prospective teachers and paraprofessionals in the classroom, and even master's degrees for existing teachers, particularly to make them more qualified in math and science.
WGU off the ground at the start in terms of explaining it to the students, but also to faculty and academics elsewhere, that it was really hard for them to get their heads around something that was fully competency-based.
And I always felt that in education, we relied too much on, hey, you just sit in the seat and you get a degree. I wanted to have an education that was based on performance, and where a person could come in and say, hey, look, I already have half this skill. Can you test me and don't make me sit through an unnecessary time?
We needed to invent a different way of doing things, particularly with regard to redefining the practicum and the student teaching.
There were no online teacher education programs. There were no competency-based teacher education programs. So this is totally unique, an online competency-based teacher education.
But when I think about what my legacy is, it's being part of the creation of this extraordinary teachers college.
Oftentimes in the course of your life, there are things you do not realize the importance of it. But as I look back, my work on that was one of the more important things I did as 12 years as governor. And it's so needed right now.
Students have made the adjustment, so teachers must make the adjustment as well. And so for teachers to figure out ways that they can reach students who otherwise could not be reached and provide opportunities to students who otherwise would not have opportunities, this is a major advancement in teacher education as it is in the rest of the world.
WGU working in the competency-based area especially in education, will help to get those ideas down into K through 12, and we hope higher ed can learn a few things as well in terms of adopting that model a bit more widely.
You're really demonstrating your, not only that the model works, but the general value to society.
And I think our teachers from WGU are particularly well placed and positioned to take advantage of those new teaching and learning models as they come online and as they grow their expertise in using and applying those models to reach the students that they teach.
WGU, from an idea about how competency-based learning could revolutionize higher education and end the K-12 system as a result, has gone from just an idea to actually proving it out, and not just proving it out sort of, in a small experimental site with a few students, but at scale that is having significant impact across the nation and in many communities that need it most.
WGU is a great tool, and I'm so happy to see it celebrate and expand.
To all of the alumni and all of the faculty and teachers and the leadership, just way to go.
Way to go, WGU, and way to go, Teachers College. Keep it going and growing.
You are truly revolutionizing American education all over the world, and we will all be better for it. Thank you.
To all the staff and all the faculty, past and current and future, thank you.
I'm very proud of the opportunity to serve as United States Secretary of Education and to experience many of the new things that I experienced. But of all of my experiences in that position, one of the greatest one was this idea. To see the beginning of it and to see where it is now is an amazing experience for me, and I'm very proud of what is taking place there.
So we are joined by our illustrious Provost and Chief Academic Officer, Marty Baker Stein. Hi, Marty. And we also have the president of NCHEMS, a key policy leader and one of the earliest innovators to help us ideate around WGU, Sally Johnstone. Hi, Sally. We also have one of our founding board members and chief kind of backers from the beginning, Tom Vanderark. Hi, Tom. And one of our kind of ideators and partners in practice, the leader of the digital learning practice with the Post-Secondary Success Initiative at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and a real catalyst for the change on the road ahead, and a great thought partner for us here at WGU Teachers College, Deputy Director of the Gates Foundation's Post-Secondary Success Initiative, Raheem Rajan. Hi, Raheem.
Hi.
What's up? So, Marty, I want to kick to you first, because in the history of higher education, WGU is pretty unique, right? And the idea of leveraging this learning model in the world of teacher education is definitely a kind of a bold statement. Talk about the importance of WGU kind of leaning into teacher college as a model. What a difference maker that is in the world of education.
Oh, wow. Well, I just feel like WGU's primary mission, which is to serve working students, non-traditional students, low-income students, and students of color, and to organize everything that we do around the success of these students who have many logistical, life gets in the way barriers to education, has created a channel for access for students to become teachers and to have huge impacts in the communities where they live that simply were not there before. And we see that in how the Teachers College has grown to serve, over 33,000 students, 50,000 plus grads, number one producer of teachers of color across the country, right in the communities that need them. We've seen how this model, organized around the learner, has worked and really created an incredible impact, and I would say a movement across the country, and to drive that talent pipeline in ways that it absolutely needs to be driven.
So, Sally, I'll turn to you next, because you were one of the original good troublemakers in kind of conceptualizing WGU. And now with your role at the National Center for I'll see if I can get your title right. The National Center for Higher Education Management Systems, right? Got it. And that policy role in working with states is getting them to think differently about how they can do things in policy and practice that can impact outcomes in the world of education. Go all the way back to the origination of WGU. You were one of the original people brought in to help us conceptualize what would be possible. You worked with the governors and the different and the other people who are looking at this possibility. Think about, I would love for you just to reflect on that a bit, because you actually helped come up with this idea of doing this thing differently in a way that would help people like the folks here who are the alumni and the students currently of our Teachers College, right?
Sure. It was a fascinating process, and quite frankly, driven by the desires of the governors in the Western states to basically say, we need better services for the citizens of our states. And I want to use Teachers College as an example here. We know that the normal schools throughout the country that have become our state comprehensive universities in a lot of states are where most of the teachers in a state go to school, or they were in the past. And we also know that people who go to those schools when they're 18 years old, graduate and go into teaching, 1 in 3 of them is still in teaching after 5 years. Now, because of WGU and the ways in which the skills, knowledge, education can be offered to people regardless of where they are, the students who come to WGU know they want to be teachers, and they want to be teachers in their own communities. And they're not going to leave and go off to a different kind of university to be able to get that teaching credential and leave their families and leave what they're doing and everything else. They want to stay in their community. So the difference here is with WGU and the appropriate services that are offered, it really makes a difference in the communities where teachers are absolutely needed. As we sort of developed all of this, we were hoping that that was what would happen. And indeed it has, which is exceedingly exciting.
Yeah, kind of from a crazy idea to a big impactful player, right?
Yep, in the right ways.
That's good. That's good. Tom, you've watched this grow and develop. I'd love to just get your reflection on those early days when you were sitting in the board meetings thinking about what was possible when literally it was getting into the hundreds of students, right? It just has to be kind of interesting to look at where it is now.
Mark, I remember hearing about this crazy idea when I was a school superintendent here in Washington State, having started what I think was the first K-12 online school in America. And about a year later, I remember hearing Governor Levitt talk about this idea for an online university. It would not only be online, it would be competency-based, it would be affordable, and that combination would extend access to quality learning in brand new and innovative ways. It's just hard to to overstate how innovative that package was as an idea. And it was so exciting to watch Levitt and Romer advocate for this idea, and for very quickly the remaining governors to join them and form this this radical, innovative organization. And it was really an honor for me, for the Gates Foundation, to be able to come alongside the governors and help support this institution. And I think it's just the impact has just been beyond anything that we could have imagined 20 years ago. So it's just it's very exciting.
And Tom, just one of the things to make sure we note is this is one of those bipartisan efforts where it absolutely was both sides of the aisle, together with philanthropy, together with innovators, saying, let's put our shoulder to the wheel on this. That was a little different than what happens in a lot of cases, right?
It's interesting, Mark. This came together almost simultaneously with No Child Left Behind, which also in its day was a sign of bipartisan support for equity and excellence in education. So 20 years ago, there was a platform where people could work together across the aisles and do extraordinary things. I would say WGU worked out a lot better than NCLB, though, in terms of bipartisan innovation.
Well, speaking of that kind of innovation that is, go ahead, Sally.
I was just going to say that, adding on to Tom's comments, I was in most of those meetings with the governors in the early days, and no one knew what they wanted, but they knew they wanted something really different. And there were no partisan divides in those meetings. And these were the meetings of the governors themselves, maybe their chief of staff, but no other players. So they could talk frankly among themselves. And as WGU as a concept began to evolve, everybody was on board because they could see the strength in the way that it could operate.
And Marty, you were a power innovator in that space for in the world of higher education over the last 20 years, having been watching WGU kind of emerge and come in. Like, is that part of what drew you to WGU? Is the fact that you had been innovating really from the inside out at some very traditional places, and this was a chance for you to come and lead the kind of institution that was doing this from scratch, right?
Yeah, in fact, I remember when, 20 plus years ago when I first heard about WGU, like I was sitting in my basement office at the University of Pennsylvania working on, accreditation stuff. And I heard about this and I thought, my stars, like they're actually doing it. They're actually going to try to break the credit hour and create these rich competency based pathways. And I remember talking to everybody about it and they're like, oh, that's never going to work. It's never going to work. We'll never see, you'll never hear about it again 2-3 years down the line. And I thought, maybe, but I'm going to make it my North Star. And WGU, even though I never even, I didn't know really much more about it than that article taught me, became kind of my North Star for the rest of my career. So when the opportunity came for me to actually work at WGU, it was more than an honor. It was a dream come true, actually. So it's been an incredible inspiration to me personally and to a lot of innovators across higher education who actually see this bold idea that was put out there and then it actually works, and it doesn't just work, it works at scale. That's amazing.
Yeah. And Raheem, that's where I'd love to bring you in, is you really are trying to catalyze some of the most compelling work in the world of higher education right now. And part of that work is trying to help people understand that this isn't about trying things, small little pilots in different places. It's actually trying to innovate at scale to try to impact the outcomes for more and more diverse students across the world of higher education. How important is it for you to have somebody like a WGU to say, hey, it can be done? Right? There are other people that talk a little bit about the impact of WGU as a model in that kind of ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you for organizing this, and congratulations to WGU for this really auspicious milestone. I think it's enormously important. Our sector faces incredible challenges, even right now, as we continue to suffer through the pandemic. The sector is facing incredible loss points, lack of enrollment, et cetera. And so, having institutions that have actually either designed directly for their students new experiences, harnessing the learning sciences, harnessing the best innovations that are out there to create learning experiences that are engaging, that meet them where they are, that provide flexibility for the lives that they're living. It's incredibly useful and it's incredibly important. And I think just to mark that how far we've come in the last decade, from when some of these ideas were literally, diagrams on a whiteboard, conversations on a phone, to actually now demonstrating success for thousands of students year in and year out. And not just thousands of students, but students of color, students that are experiencing poverty, students that are working, supporting their families, supporting their communities, essential workers, you know, just the, you know, meeting the needs of today and tomorrow's workforce, right? Connecting with employers, completely redesigning the pathway and creating curricula that meet the needs of the sector. I mean, that's just a little bit of the innovation that has been untapped at WGU. And I just think that you can see it. More and more institutions in the sector are not looking at WGU as an exception, as an outlier. They're looking at it as a model to learn from and to learn what they can take from that model to fit the needs of their institution.
I love the notion that you just laid out of this was leveraging innovation and these kinds of digital technologies, not to extend privilege, right? To like help the kind of lead students have more access to other opportunities. This is really about trying to solve some hard problems and kind of work it. How that's pretty important for your work, Raheem, is because you're trying to help people understand these tools can be used as access engines and as trying to help more people be successful. Is that a good way to think about it?
Absolutely. I think for so long, you know, there's been this debate about digital learning, about the value of digital learning, for whom does it benefit? And I think there's more and more compelling evidence that digital learning offers flexible options. It meets students where they are. You know, most students today, we call them the new majority. These are students, they're working. Many of them are attending post-secondary part-time. They're not able to attend full-time. They're supporting their families. Sometimes they're caregivers. So having flexible, affordable, personalized options that meet them where they are is the definition of higher education in the 21st century. We have to serve students where they are. We have to meet the needs of those students. And that population of students is not a small population anymore. Increasing, they are the new majority. So this is absolutely an equity conversation about how do we deliver high quality, affordable learning at scale to really meet the needs of these students. And that is going to look different in the 21st century than it did in the 19th and the 20th century.
Tom, you have been a champion of this notion of personalized learning for decades, and trying to help people understand, you know, what the real value of this is. Not just about the kind of atomized improvement of specific learning moments. It really is about helping somebody navigate an entire journey. I would just love for you to talk about the importance of not only providing this for higher education in general, but providing it for teachers, so that teachers actually touch and feel what this feels like to do this kind of work.
Mark, WGU is such an important innovation, particularly for teachers, really for two reasons. One is that you combine the idea of personalized and competency-based learning, where every learner has their own unique journey, where they have the ability to move at their own pace, to study in their own place, but to do it in context with an advisor and with a cohort. And so it's personalized, but it has a rich, supportive context around it. And most of us are still trying to get that combination right of learning that is highly personal, but supportive and social. And I think WGU was early at getting that formula right. The reason it's so important for teachers is that we want a teacher's own learning experience, to the extent possible, to mirror what they're trying to create for learners. And for teachers to be able to experience in their own preparation personalization in place, in time, in style, in support, and in terms of their cohort is so critically important, because it creates a set of mental models about what they're trying to do in the classroom.
Yeah, just to extend that, Marty, just for a little bit, I think part of that personalization, part of that power, is to make sure that we're kind of reaching and teaching students where they are and helping them to where they go. And that in this pandemic has been particularly important, because this pandemic has really hit women hard. It's hit them hard in the job market, but especially in our space. 83% of the students at Teachers College are women. and they have really been on the front lines of this larger work. Talk about the importance in particular of these kinds of models in kind of meeting the needs of women, working women, women with kids. Like this is a game changer, right? The more they can experience this and how they can actually leverage this for success.
For sure. The WGU model, I think for women, especially in this moment, but in all moments for women, to have the kind of extreme flexibility that we allow, where it's not just online and competency based, but the fact is you can create your personalized path through the competencies, through the courses, through your credential or your degree, and you can build your learning experiences and your assessment timing around your kids being home from school and your working and your husband's schedule or your own schedule as it changes at work. These are really serious frictions that women face day to day that the WGU model allows grace for. And in fact, once you take that assessment at WGU, which you might schedule for 3 a.m. in the morning on a Thursday, because that's the only time you can take it. If you don't pass that competency, that's not a black mark on your transcript. That is an indication that you have more to learn, and you get personalized feedback that allows you to do that learning and take it again, and move on to the next competency and move on to that degree. That kind of flexibility, extreme flexibility, which takes a completely different model that WGU has been investing in and learning about all this time, is what we need for the future for low-income students, all low-income working students, but women in particular.
Yeah, I love this notion. I think I've heard you say it before, Marty, that this is a system that is based on grace, not on justice, right? And I think that's pretty powerful for the folks who are listening in, because the learning can be hard at times, life can be hard at times, and that grace gives them the ability to continue learning during complicated context, right? Yeah. Hey, Sally, I'd love for you to jump in for a second, in particular, because you've been leading work during the pandemic and now as we're thinking about what's happening next around this idea of um, now that we're kind of all deeply exposed to this different kind of learning models, especially given what's happened in this, we have millions of students who've now been exposed to using digital tools and different kinds of strategies. You're actually trying to champion the notion of what is smart policy and practice around remote learning. First, I'd love for you to talk a bit about that remote learning term and why you're leveraging it and how a WGU actually provides some exemplars for that kind of work.
Thanks. Absolutely, Mark. We like to think of what's going on right now in 90+% of the cases, both in higher ed and K-12, as remote delivery. It's basically taking what people did in a classroom and pushing it out using technology, which is wonderful if that's your only option. It truly, truly is. And as we look at what constitutes a real framework for well-supported online learning, it isn't just remote delivery. And we hear this all the time in the news. And I've talked to my niece who's got to supervise, 2 kids at home trying to be on computers at different times and blah, blah, blah. It's tough stuff. It's really tough stuff. And I would suggest that where WGU is, and the whole framework of competency base, as Marnie just said, it cuts through the kinds of support structures that are really critical to help people learn, whether they're in a school or when they're learning from home. It's not just, here's the information, go for it, take a test. It is rather, how do we help you, just as Marnie said, get from where you are to the next step in your learning pathway. And we hear about this around the country right now, of people figuring out, oh gosh, it works better and people succeed more if we have actual learning pathways and they're not just all by themselves. Surprise! But in addition to that, the kind of assistance that is really critical to help people move forward cannot be ignored. And I would push WGU as a marvelous example, but as other colleges and universities are moving progressively into distance delivered programs, not just remote delivery. We've been working with the NC SARA folks, the State Reciprocity Group, who has decided to take the lead in really creating a set of 21st century distance education guidelines. And we're at the final stages of that. We've included the accrediting community, the big players, even WGU folks had a chance to kind of look at where we were and give us some feedback on it. But we're ready to start rolling these out within the next few months. And the accrediting community seems to be on board with us. So it's really, as Raheem said, the requirement that institutions that are going to move in this direction indeed take advantage of the new sciences evolving around learning, the new ways in which we can look at technology and not just replicate a classroom, but also the new contractual relationships that are developing. And I know some of that relates to WGU too, but it's not a simple just turn on a Zoom call and we can all figure it out.
Yeah, and Raheem, we've talked about this before in other conversations, that conflation that happened between the emergency remote learning and the advanced kind of deep research that's been done about high quality digital learning. I think people are realizing that's a false choice, right? It's not, emergency remote learning or in person. There's actually deep, rich experiences in broader ways. And that's where I'd love to shift, because WGU Teachers College and WGU writ large has absolutely been a game changer in kind of shifting people's mindsets and proved that this can be done at scale. And part of that kind of leans into what's next. What are the other things you could be doing? And one of the things that's pretty important for us is we want to make sure we're weaving in kind of this notion of healthy learning, right? How do you bring in DEI? How do you bring in SEL work? How do you make sure the community of care concepts are carried forward, deal with mental health challenges and others, and really kind of ensure that as you're leveraging digital technologies, you're doing it in a way where you're actually helping really important, deep, rich learning concepts come forward. And I know that's been a big part of your work as people have tried to kind of embed this in the digital learning experiences. We're not going to create healthy learning environments unless we actually champion some of that work in this larger kind of digital enterprise. I'd just love for you to talk a bit about that and kind of the exciting road ahead for the digital learning enterprise and for folks like WGU and for the teachers who are here, because they're going to be a part of catalyzing that, right?
I think absolutely the next horizon for us in this space is really marrying the benefits of the innovations and the tools, the analytics, the data, and the platforms with actually evidence-based teaching and practices from the learning sciences, from the education sciences, from the psychological sciences. There's enormous learning we have, even just over the last decade, about stereotype threat, about belonging, about personalization and relevance, cultural relevance, right? How do we create a learning environment that not only meets the students in terms of their flexible needs around time or pace, but for them to feel invested in that learning experience, to feel that this is relevant for me as an individual, right? And so I think the horizon ahead of us is really fusing the benefits of the technology, the platforms, the analytics, the continuous improvement that is there, the R&D that is necessary to advance those platforms and technologies with the human interaction, right? So when is it optimal for an instructor or for a coach to check in on a student and find out what's going on in their life? Are they okay? There's a lot of things, especially right now, that are hidden, there's a lot of debates right now about proctoring, about students having their cameras on and off, and students are living very difficult journeys right now. Sometimes they're living in, uncomfortable, or, they have insecure housing. They might have issues around economic security. So we have to understand the whole context of our learners. And I think, the fusing of that, the psychological sciences, the educational sciences around effective pedagogy and teaching with the technology, that's the next horizon that as a sector we all have to aspire towards and make progress on.
I know, Tom, and you're getting smart work in the blog and the kind of online conversations you're catalyzing. This has really been part of the mashup, right? It's the mashup between what people are learning and how they can learn combined with the technology that can help bring that learning to the fore. Talk a bit about the importance of that coming together, because I'll just be blunt. It seemed for years that people used to have this very basic, almost Cro-Magnon theory that technology will improve learning, right? That was the whole thing, is like technology was the answer. It's far more complicated than that, but we could definitely do learning in a different, more impactful way.
Mark, we just released a report called 20 Invention Opportunities. It was sponsored by the Gates Foundation and the Walton Foundation. We did a 90-day sprint around the big invention opportunities in learning and development. And the big takeaway is that making a difference in learning for kids and adults is not just new tools. It's usually a combination of new practices and new tools and new agreements. That's why innovation is difficult in education, because you really need all three of those. This is an intermediated space where you can't just invent a new app and assume that it gets delivered to the consumer. It's where an environment, a sequence of experiences is created with and by a teacher, a learning facilitator. And that's why I'm so excited about WGU's emphasis on learning experience design. You're by far the largest degree grantor in that space, and it's a space that we think that's where teaching is headed, where teachers are becoming learning experience designers, and they may be learning advisors, and they're learning about that and experiencing both of those roles through WGU.
Yeah, and Marty, that's part of this conversation is going to be how we build that, Teachers College for the next generation, because these are the kinds of skill sets we're going to need in the teachers and leaders of tomorrow, right?
For sure. I mean, whether it is this notion of new models of a 360-degree community of care, what does that even mean? Thinking of students as cases that are managed based on data and evidence-based practice just in time. What does that look like? How do leaders of educational institutions set up the infrastructure for that? And how do teachers teach in that as part of a team? That's a big shift. High impact pedagogies that are mediated both by teachers as well as really personalized digital elements into the future in new environments with new types of content, not just text and videos, but augmented reality and simulations, problem-based learning in digital environments that are rich in terms of the context they produce. These are really new concepts. They're really new pedagogies. They're really new assessment types. They're really new ways of teachers working together as a community of learning and practice, and almost like learning scientists. So that's a big shift ahead, and it's happening fast. And COVID, everything that's happened with COVID is just going to accelerate it. And we're super excited to be offering that program at WGU, but it's something we need to think about much more broadly as an education sector if we're going to attend to what education leaders across the board are going to need into the future.
Yeah, I know we've talked a lot about the idea that we're going to lean hard into K-12 teachers, K-12 leaders, but we're also looking at higher education, how we can actually help change the conversation there and actually build out higher education leaders and higher education learning experience designers. As that work's taking shape, Sally, I'd love to just get your sense. Do you think the pandemic might have actually opened some people's eyes in the policy world in particular to the need to create some better enabling policies for this shift? Because this shift is coming and more people are going to want to use more tools to help more and more diverse students. What's your sense of like the sense of urgency or interest around this now that people have had to live through what we just lived through in the last year? Are they just so busy being heads down they're not thinking about it, or do you think there's already some larger conversation around creating the enabling infrastructure, kind of things where you're developing these guidances? Do you think the policy community is going to be ready to listen to that?
Yes. And the reason I say that is we're not in a moment just of a pandemic that influences how both young people and adults are learning. We were already on a trajectory of the state finance world changing and the recognition that demographics are shifting, the realities that some states are continuing to have lots of young people and other states are not. So, with all of that coming together and layering on the pandemic, what we're finding is there's a lot of state leaders, and by that I mean governors, legislators, as well as the state higher education executives that are very engaged in trying to figure out what makes sense. How in the world do we take what we developed 50, 80, 100 years ago as physical spaces and translate that into public policy that can support well-designed learning opportunities for people statewide that can be sustainable. And we've been working intensely with several states in that regard. And there isn't a one size fits all because there isn't one model that all states use, but rather as you go in and help the public policy folks, and again, legislators, governors, as well as the higher ed leadership, and help them to understand how you have to begin to do things differently. They are very receptive. And we're seeing more and more governors' budgets reflecting our recommendations, more and more legislators accepting it and saying this isn't fun, but we don't have a choice. We must have an educated population within our state. And even though the population has shifted in terms of what they look like or what they expect or what they do or don't do, as Marty said, we have to meet them where they are and create structures that will enable them to move forward. And along those lines, Mark, we've also been doing work with both the accrediting community and the state higher education systems groups to try and figure out how the accrediting community can begin to adapt to the realities of the decisions that are being made along the lines of everything we've been talking about here and incorporate that into a more realistic way of looking at the institutions they accredit and including communication with the state higher education executives. That is also work that we're tying the bows on right now and hope to take that a little further for implementation. But nobody has said, oh no, I don't care about that. It's just the opposite. As we've approached people, everyone is interested in looking toward the future and taking into considerations the kinds of lessons that are coming out of WGU.
I think it's going to be a different day for teaching and leading in the world of education. About a little over 15 years ago, I was a part of a book project called Practical Magic on the front lines of teaching excellence, and we studied about 5,000 teaching excellence award winners, and we did deep dive focus groups with about 150 of those teachers. And one of my favorite stories out of it was a teacher who came up and said, "Listen, you have to understand the best of teachers are purveyors of the case method." I'm like, "What's the case method?" He said, "Copy and steal everything." If other people are doing good things, you got to figure out how you pull it in and use it. And boy, it showed up in our research again and again and again. And that goes back to this notion of communities of practice. And in this kind of rich environment where there's going to be an openness to probably more innovation than ever before, one of the things we want to do at WGU Teachers College is really catalyze a community of practice. We want to pull together our K-12 teachers, our community college colleagues, our Access University friends and family, and figure out how we can share those kinds of innovations and make sure that people are kind of, this is working, this isn't working, this is what we're learning, this is what we're seeing. I'd love just to have each of you talk about the value and the importance of that kind of community of practice, because there's something special about that. And we can talk about it in a grand sense, but even just a classroom teacher developing, a personal learning network. Who are the people you're going to connect with? They're going to say, you need to read this, you need to watch this video, you need to meet this person. There's real richness in that kind of interaction and community of practice. And we as a community here at WGU Teachers College could be that. We have 50,000 alumni, 30,000 students. We have a big community. But Tom, I'd just love for you to talk about that value of the community of practice, because I know you've heard the same thing in your work.
No, I appreciate that, Mark. I wrote a book 2 years ago called Better Together, which is about school networks and why groups of teachers need to work together, as you said, to steal and borrow and share across like-minded models. So that is clearly the future. I also want to just underscore the cool work that you're leading at WGU and the Open Skills Network. A great example of you creating a network of colleagues to build some common skill definitions, and I think beginning to incorporate the key ideas of educating to skills and credentialing those skills, bringing that into the Teachers College is going to be an important next innovation, and it will be the sort of thing that teachers collaborate on inside school networks for the rest of this decade.
Marty, that's one of your babies, so I'm gonna let you talk about it for a minute.
It is. It's just like a baby, up at night, exhausting. Yeah, no, that's what I was going to mention as well. I think one really powerful use case for community of practice for teachers or for leaders of educational institutions is really defining this next generation set of skills and pathways that we need to get ahead of if we're going to be effective into the future. That is really critical work, and we can't do it in silos. It's not proprietary. It shouldn't be proprietary. We figure out what those skills are, we figure out what those pathways are, and then we all work like crazy to build educational programming on top of it that really makes a difference. So that's sort of the spirit of the Open Skills Network, and surely this is one skills library, the skills library for educators of the future, that is a critical outcome that could come out of that would be really, really powerful, and we're excited to work on.
Raheem, I know in your work, it's really important. This kind of innovation network effect has been a big part of the Gates Foundation theory of work. Just talk to these classroom teachers who are in our network right now, and to these building leaders about the value of that kind of connection to kind of get innovation rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so fundamental. I think as a social impact investor, we have seeded multiple efforts to build that kind of dialogue and that community. What I'm actually excited about is cross-sector. How do we cross-pollinate, knowledge and learning? I would argue in some ways the K-12 movement around pedagogy, blended learning is actually more sophisticated in some ways than, say, the higher ed practice, the post-secondary practice. Now, some of that is shifting. We're certainly trying to lean on that and to accelerate and improve that ecosystem. But there's a lot of learning over the last 20 years in blended models, in instructional practice, in supporting learners in real time through different instructional practices that actually came out of the K-12 movements that we should leverage in post-secondary, or at least we should understand and interrogate and analyze which of those models work. How do they work? how
It's
much
okay to say,
technology-
it's okay to say steal. It's okay.
Exactly. Yeah, like we don't need to reinvent what doesn't need to be reinvented. And let's not presume everything will be a one-to-one match, right? There's going to be things we learn in community colleges, in some of our, open access institutions, in some of our large lecture-based, general education courses where faculty are now deploying, real-time active learning, different strategies to create peer-to-peer interaction, which works in a large class with hundreds of students. It may not work in a class of 20, right? So there's a lot of practice innovation. We often think of innovation purely in terms of technology. Let's be honest, there's a ton of pedagogical innovation, practice innovation, leveraging evidence, leveraging improvement science to build new practices. And I think none of that should happen in silos or with individuals. We need communities of practice. We need areas of sharing excellence and best practice. That's how we scale real change. And I think that's the hallmark of what Western Governors has done. You all, like we talked about earlier, you're not piloting innovations. You're doing them at scale and measuring the results, learning what can be improved and improving it and moving on to the next innovation. That's what we need in higher education and in education more broadly to close the opportunity gaps.
And folks, we are getting close to time. So I just want to say, I want to make sure I can give Randall a second to pull you all up. And I just want to say a big thanks for taking part of this conversation. This is a neat moment for WGU Teachers College. This is a time to take a deep breath. We've been working hard, serving lots of students, and especially during this pandemic. But it is a moment to take a breath and kind of ring the bell after 20 years when this kind of founding idea of creating a teachers college that would leverage competency-based learning-centered progression in an online format and partnering with school districts all over the country, literally in all 50 states, to create this dynamic active learning model, but especially to create this engaged community of practice where we can kind of learn together how to do this. And I got to tell you, it is so special for us that we get to learn with people like you. So thank you for taking the time today and then being a part of this larger conversation. We so appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Gotta love that conversation and those good troublemakers that help WGU Teachers College be what it is every day. We want to hear now from one of our illustrious graduates, Maureen Stover, who is up for a major recognition. Let's turn to that video right now.
A lot of people think that the Teacher of the Year program is a competition. And in reality, what it is identifying people that will be really great advocates for those students and teachers at the state level and bringing together a team of educators who have a passion for education and a passion for advocacy and are looking for ways to continue improving the systems of public education in our state. So really what I am is, while my title is Teacher of the Year, what I really am is the team captain for 9 extraordinary educators that are doing incredible things in education and advocating for kids. The thing I'm most excited about is our commitment to equitable education and providing those equitable opportunities for every single kid. As educators, we've known for years that those inequities existed, but now because of the pandemic, a lot of those inequities have risen to the surface where now the public also sees them, and so do policymakers. As we transitioned into the pandemic and went into remote learning, for a lot of students, that was the very first time that they had ever been in a remote learning environment. And so because I had been a remote learning student, I understood how important it was to have that constant connection. Most definitely, both as a classroom teacher in a face-to-face model and as a classroom teacher in a blended or remote model, my experience at WGU has truly set me up for success, because as a student, I experienced how that works and how that looks. And that means that I was better able to effectively implement that as a teacher. be that teacher voice and to be the solution provider has really been extraordinary for our team. And it's just been really incredible to work with 9 other educators who are as passionate about public education as I am, and are as committed to advocating for those students and teachers to make sure the kids in our public schools are getting what they need.
As we bring this to a close, I want to bring in our VPs. And Stacy, I want to start with you. You have to love our graduates. Gotta love our students. They're out there just from so many different backgrounds, diverse stories, and diverse trajectories that they're going on. But man, it is a rowdy group and a great group to work with, isn't it?
It is. And you know, as we watch the comments that Maureen shared, it's just like how proud we are of our students and our alumni for the work that they do and the path that they chose to be teachers and leaders, and the amplification that they can have of that good work on the students and families in their classrooms. And so we really just think of it as a privilege to be able to serve these students and alumni every day. So thank you for making that commitment to making a difference in people's lives. And we want to continue to stay engaged and connected with you. So all of you that are teachers or alumni, please stay connected with us through our Teachers College Learning Community, our fantastic alumni network, or through other networking events just like this one. Thank you for making commitment to change the lives of other students and families. So appreciate it.
And I love that, Stacy. And Aaron, I just want to say, the magic happens because of our amazing faculty and staff, the heart and smart of those folks, how they're working to build these personal relationships with these students. It's what makes WGU special.
Mark, it surely is. Our faculty and our staff really make a difference in the lives of students, and we stand on the greatness of our past faculty and staff. This 20-year celebration is a great opportunity to recognize that amazing work, that willingness to innovate and be creative in the curriculum and the experiences that we provide to our students, and for the learning journey. That really is the special sauce, if you will, that is the Teachers College and WGU. And we are so grateful for the amazing work that our faculty and staff do every day, and for the things that they provide to our students, so that we can have individuals like Maureen who are out there making a difference in the lives of the K-12 learners that they deal with every day. And we're so proud to be a part of this, and so honored to be here celebrating this 20 years from idea to impact.
And for those of you who are going to stay with us afterwards for the networking session, if you RSVP'd, you'll have an email in your inbox that has the links. To make sure you join the second link for the special networking event after the fact. But for everybody else, and for anybody who's going to continue on in the conversations with us, just a final thank you for attending this event. And tonight, we stand on the shoulders of power innovators like Governor Leavitt, Governor Romer, Bob Mendenhall, and a whole host of core innovators that helped WGU Teachers College come into its own, and especially Secretary Rod Page, who I loved having in that video, who helped us with that initial grant to kind of, again, go from idea to impact. Think about that, 20 years. And 20 years ago at this time, this was a crazy idea, and now it's the largest college of education in the United States, making a difference for all different kinds of students all around the country, and you're a part of that legacy. Thank you very much, everybody.